All right, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to our general meeting, the second meeting of the month. Councillors, I think we're all present. We just might note that Councillor Cypher is actually going to be with us in a small while. She's actually just over visiting the CWA right next to the building here, so she may be a few moments late, so we report her as being present at the appropriate point. So apologies, councillors. Any apologies? Obviously all here. Leave of absence required for future meetings. Councillor Godwin Smith.
Yes, if I can seek leave of absence for the 11th of September, please, Mr. Mayor.
The 11th of September.
Mr. Mayor, that's recorded in the minutes of the previous meeting that my leave of absence for today, but that should also be for the 11th. So we could either take a dual motion now, if we can, for a leave of absence for the 11th and then change the minutes of the previous meeting. But yeah, whatever happened in that confusion last meeting, it should have been the 11th. Yeah.
Well, I think we can make that resolution now. We'll deal with those minutes there following forward. That's all right.
Yes, I'm going with Councillor Godwin Smith for a trip.
You do.
You come with me. You don't tell me.
I'll move.
We'll do this now. Sorry.
I'll move that.
Sorry. Yeah, the leaves of absence. That's all good. All right. So there's leaves of absence for Councillor Godwin Smith for the 11th and Councillor Bell for the 11th as well. So moved by Councillor Gale Nixon, second by Megan. Councillor Daniels. All in favour? Again? Thank you. We'll just record the statement. Zero of this. All right. Well, that'll bring us nicely to the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting, which was the general meeting of the 24th of July, which is not quite correct, is it? Should be the 7th of August.
Yeah,
7th of August.
Mayor, just again reflecting on the leave of absence and my leave of absence, which is recorded in there, we could just have an alteration to the minutes before they're confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. So we'll just note that and make those changes.
Just out of interest, councillors, you might remember we had the conflict of interest declarations at the last meeting, and it seemed like a convoluted or a clunky process. We went through, and I think there were comments made to that effect. Happy to report that upon review of how we handled the matter by local government specialist solicitors King & Company, they're very pleased with the way we've handled it, and they believe that having the elected member vacate the meeting room while the peers consider whether or not they have a conflict is best practice. We did ask the question as to whether or not they will amend the Ready Retina guide. So I'll just finish the one on theirs, which is this one here. Obviously they've all gone to print, but I'd imagine it will be included in the next version. So I thought that's pretty good that we're, while it might seem uncomfortable, we're setting the standard, and if we can keep that up, I believe that we're making sure that we're applying the law in the best possible way. So well done.
Just here in the side portion there. All right, can someone that was present actually move those minutes, please? That's a confirmation moved by Councillor Brindlecombe, seconded Councillor Godwin Smith. So is there anything else in there before we adopt those? We'll make those changes that Councillor Bell suggested, just to make sure that we get that right. Nothing else? All right. Councillors, will it be moved and seconded? All those in favour? Against? Thank you. All right, business arising in those minutes. Just like I suppose on page 15 of your agenda, and certainly page 11 of those minutes there, a letter has been sent to Mrs. Thelma Driscoll, I guess on council's behalf, just expressing our gratitude certainly and congratulating certainly the Kevin Driscoll Family Trust for that extraordinary donation to the Second Heart of Australia Trust, which is in fact I think a prime mover and quite a significant obviously piece of infrastructure, but it's just a magnificent surgery to go and have a look on site on the Heart of Australia site of Dr. Rolf Guns. Certainly there, extolling the virtues of that family. So thank you very much to Councillor Godwin Smith for providing that, and we certainly pass that on. Any other business out of there? Any business writing out of that? All good. Right, councillors, to the review of the outstanding meeting actions. Just references to numbers again, councillors, if there's something there that you can see that needs to be raised. There's been a couple of updates today in relation to some of those in the explanatory section there, so nothing out of those, councillors. We'll move on. Upcoming agenda items. I think unless there's something burning there, I think it's pretty much straightforward. All right, councillors, we'll move on.
Through Mr. Mayor, I just note that the adoption of the community engagement policy was scheduled for discussion earlier this morning, so that was pushed back until we can next get on the agenda.
Well, the alternative is through the mayor that we can deal with it and have that discussion during the meeting. It's on the.
It's on the strategy.
Yeah.
On the strategy meeting, yeah.
So we'll leave it for 2 weeks.
You can do it now.
No, I thought that it might be in the, not in the agenda.
Not in this one.
No, so 2 weeks on. Concurrently, we'll have to do it with strategy and then straight into.
All right, councillors, any material personal interest, conflicts of interest, personal gifts and benefits to declare? After that last meeting, we've probably been gun shy, haven't we? But yeah, there certainly was a lot of declarations at that last meeting, that's for sure. And worked through well as the CEO pointed out. So no other NPIs, conflicts, brilliant. Thank you, councillor.
So long as there's been framework discussion today.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll be mindful of that. No petitions, Mr. CEO, as presented?
No.
All right, well, we'll move on, I guess, to the first agenda items that come under our community section, which is on page 18 of your agenda of 102, and that's the development application. I see our development application team is here, Jen Marsh is here, Kirsten Byrne is here. Did you want to come down, Kirsten? Yeah. Just as an aside, en route to their the jury box here, Jen Marsh has certainly prominently displayed bingo races on the weekend. Jen, so it's nice to see you attending council, the races on council's behalf. Putting your best foot forward. Very good.
All right. Yeah, I did see a photo with another gentleman from the ELT. Brightly.
Very
bright
brave
photos.
shapes.
Yes, I think taking his dressing habits after a certain Marist College teacher, I think. But yeah, I'll pass it over now to GM Daniel Fletcher, who might do the introduction. Thank you, Daniel.
Mr. Mayor, through you, councillors, this planning report has been brought to you because a submission has been received to extend the relevant period of the DA and minor change application to material change for a caravan park in Blackwater. The recommendation from the planning team is to refuse this application, and the grounds of refusal are stated there. So I'll let Kirsten and Jen detail you through those refusal grounds.
Okay, thank you. As Daniel just mentioned, a request has been submitted to extend the relevant period of the development approval. This was a material change of use for a caravan park at Mackenzie Street, Blackwater. The original application included 20 caravan sites, 500 square metres. 426 units, caretakers residence and auxiliary facilities. In 2017, a Generating Accordance approval was granted and amended the proposed development to go from 426 rooms to 410 units. The subject site is located at Mackenzie Street, Blackwater, and legally described as Lot 60 on SP 197267. The site is situated on the western side of the township with a total area of just in excess of 3 hectares and has direct frontage to Mackenzie Street. The original application was assessed under the planning scheme at the time, that being the Doringa Planning Scheme 2007, and was zoned town zone residential precinct. The original application was required to be publicly notified, and 65 properly made and 1 non-properly made submissions were received. If a similar application was submitted today, it would be impact accessible and would be required to be publicly notified. The subject site is currently zoned residential under the Blackwater Development Scheme 2011 and is located, as previously stated, the western side of the township. The site is currently vacant, and directly to the north the site adjoins a vacant lot that is zoned open space. To the south, site adjoins a lot that is zoned industrial, and land adjoining to the west is zoned open space also. East of Mackenzie Street land is zoned residential. Northeast of the subject site is the Blackwater Hospital, located within a lot zone community. Within the Doringa Shire Planning Scheme 2007, a caravan park is defined as a combination of parking of caravans and relocatable homes, camping or the pitching of tents, or the use of cabins with a maximum total use area of 80 square metres for each cabin, whether for the travelling public or long-term residents. The term includes any manager's office or resident, shop, amenity buildings and recreational and entertainment facilities, which cater exclusively to the occupants of the caravan park. The caravan park definition with the Doringa Planning Scheme 2007 does not identify nor restrict who can be accommodated with such a development, and the applicant indicates in the original planning report that the caravan park will be utilised predominantly for mine employees. The original application included 287 car parking spaces, but there were concerns at the time regarding the sufficient car parking, and the plans were amended to include an additional 115 base car parks, so a total of 402 spaces. The original assessment indicated that 469 car parking spaces and 43 wash bays should be provided on site. The Blackwater Planning Scheme does not have any definition of caravan park, which was the current what the current assessment is under, and only definitions of tourist park, non-residential worker accommodation, and larger non-residential worker accommodation is defined within the assessment report. The proposed use of the site is therefore inconsistent with these definitions. The Blackwater Planning Scheme indicates that larger scale non-residential worker accommodation is only appropriate in the part of the zone designated for this purpose east of Arthur Street. And yeah, that's in reference to figure 3 in the report. The subject development is inconsistent with the guidelines on good design for caravan parks and relocatable home parks, and is inconsistent with the setbacks of the caravan sites to total roads and the side boundary setbacks. The proposal is not considered to be in keeping with all overall outcomes of the residential zone and does not comply with the overall criteria of the Blackwater Planning Scheme. The proposal is recommended for refusal as outlined as follows. The proposed development is in conflict with the purpose of the residential zone in that the development does not achieve the residential density, scale or character intended for the zone. The proposed development site is inconsistent with the area designated for non-residential workers accommodation. The proposed development has a significant shortfall of required car parking spaces on site, and the applicant has not demonstrated that an overriding community need still exists for the development to establish on a site where the use is inconsistent with the zoning.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Tim. This is a very, obviously, very detailed report. Is there any questions that council would like to ask? I suppose just to, out of clarity, Jen, I just wanted, under what configuration it might have been something that would have been approved in terms of, what use of the site would have deemed it sort of perhaps something that would have been approved.
So primarily residential zone, so housing and these sort of associated developments. From memory, I think, just trying to think what else in that zone. I'll be able to tell you in 1 second because I've got it here. Just bear with me. 1 second.
While Jen's going through that, for that larger scale accommodation, it is designated under the Blackwater scheme to be located on the eastern side of the area. So for that purpose, it didn't quite sit squarely under Tourist Park because the assertion from the applicant was that it was going to be for mining accommodation. So that then becomes a different use category. So.
But certainly, locate where it is, getting sort of, I guess you'd say, co-accessible uses to be residential and or associated development along those lines.
So in particular, the zone provides the detached and attached dwellings in a range of styles and sizes, basically traditional houses.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
So it would be impact accessible under the current, in the current zone.
That's
for
correct.
a tourist park.
If a similar application was made today, it would be impact accessible and required to be publicly notified.
So they couldn't even have a caravan park?
Under the Blackwater Queen scheme at the moment, there's no specific definition for caravan park. However, a tourist park is defined in the Queen scheme.
It's 410 units.
Yeah.
Pretty big tourist park. It's like one of those discovery parks.
Yeah.
So the report does outline the definition of tourist park and how that does differentiate.
We're talking today about the need for caravan parks, and I know this is long-winded and has been before us before, but it just seems a shame that we can't accept something that's going to provide a service that we've spoken about this morning as being needed in the area. So,
Thanks, Justin. And that was what I was getting at, I suppose. I just wanted to know what potentially, it's not their obligation to go and tell an applicant what they can or can't do because we refuse something, but I'd certainly like to know, and the report's well written, I'm not have no fault there, it's just, I just wouldn't mind knowing what we potentially saw on that site. So.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, in that zone, a caravan park, while it would trigger impact assessment if they were to provide documentation and support something of a lower scale that was reflective of that residential zone, that could be considered, but something at this scale is completely against what we were talking about this morning too, because it's not a caravan park, and the general means that we appreciate a caravan park, it's more large scale rural workers accommodation. Workers accommodation.
Yes, sorry, Councillor.
one more short question, please, Mr. Mayor. Who triggered this? Was it the proponent or was it us coming to that date?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So currently the application was about to expire in terms of currency dates, so they had to put in basically extensions.
So we triggered it, have we?
We, through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't write to applicants when their applications are coming up to the end of the period. So the onus is on the applicant to think about it and go, oh, it's time for me to consider my options if I need to request an extension or just let it lapse.
So that means they initiated it.
They did it. So when the Planning Act was getting drafted, one of the provisions in there, in the draft that was circulated, was for the onus to be on council to notify parties towards the end of an approval period, but that was pretty quickly ruled down by a lot of the councils just because of the administrative burden and then the risk to council if we accidentally forgot to notify someone and then an approval lapsed. So that's why councils don't get in the habit of notifying people, because it just very problematic.
So just understand, this was approved and they're 4 years, is it? Well, it's been re-extended.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it definitely has, had one extension application already.
We've got some sort of policy line on that now anyway, I think about how many times you keep re-extending and
Yeah,
doing
so,
that now.
so through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of each application when it comes in is assessed on a merit basis, and we have to go through the planning scheme at the time of effect. So when that approval was given its first extension, that was under the old scheme. It's now under the Blackwater development planning scheme. So then it has to go under, it has to be assessed against the new provision, so, which it doesn't comply with.
I think there's a lot of history with this, Mr. Mayor, just for those councillors who might not understand, but prior to amalgamation, this block was sold off by during council to a developer who was going to build a caravan park on this spot. Blackwater had lost all of its caravan parks, they'd all been turned into camps, and it was their ambition to have this as a caravan park, and there was I think a lot of deliberate action taken by the old During Council to have this block created and saleable, and and I think the process itself was fairly short in regards to offer to provide to developers. I think it's changed hands a couple of times since then, but I'm not too sure on that one. But yeah, it was a deliberate action of the old During Council to try and create a caravan park site in the town. But of course, time's moved on since what happened in 2007. Yeah.
Councillors, you want to?
So that was, Mayor, that was my question was, there's no caravan parks in the town. But you don't want to have 410 units as well as a 20 site caravan park. But a caravan park would be all right. If it's not if it's in an impact accessible area, there's a problem, isn't it?
I think applicants can make some clarity around what they're aiming for, and they can do that, and the opportunities there, I guess, and so.
And there certainly are more appropriate areas that a caravan park could be located in Blackwater. So that's the level of assessment. So while we don't want to discourage caravan parks for operating across the region, there are places for them. It's just like subdivision of lots. There are places for smaller lots as opposed to larger lots. So just because something's impact accessible, it doesn't mean it's flat out refusal. It just means the applicant has to jump through a couple of extra hoops because they have so many additional conflicts with this being, it's a residential area, so the residential people, and then there's the conflict with the industrial to the south, I think, of that property. So there's those challenges at the interface there that they've got to overcome.
Right, councillors, the recommendation there is obviously there and includes the grounds for refusal. So someone have to move that refusal? Moved by Councillor Brindlecombe, seconded. Councillor Roll. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you, Kirsten. All right, councillors, page 28, which relates to Capricorn Enterprise, the MOU for 1819. Daniel, I think you could lead us again on Andrew's behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, councillors, you'll recall that this report for the memorandum of understanding between council and Capricorn Enterprise was brought forward recently, and we've made some adjustments which include the new KPIs, so they've been renegotiated with CHDC and Capricorn Enterprise to be what is considered more achievable and reflect what they'll be not only delivering on, but being able to report back to council on. And I do note as well there's been a slight adjustment, including in the report stating that the funding was discussed at the CHDC board and incorporated into a report to council, and that's how the transition from that funding occurred. So that wording in the report has been adjusted to reflect that also. So we're asking here for this to be endorsed, and that way CHDC and Capricorn Enterprise can continue on with the KPIs for next year. Happy to take any questions.
Through the mayor,
Go ahead,
just,
sorry, Councillor Smith.
this agreement here is between the council and Capricorn Enterprise. So CHDC has paid the money?
No. This is this is the 0.1% I referred to earlier when we talked about where does the tourism function sit. 99.9% of it's with CHDC, and CHDC is our economic development arm and tourist arm that takes direction from council. It's provided with fiscal support from council. This anomaly is that this piece of funding sits on our books, and it's an agreement between the council and the RTO. However, we utilise CHDC to broker the arrangement around the setting of the KPIs because it makes sense for that to happen. It's just we had that administrative function to actually pay the money and be the signatory to the MOU and therefore sign up for the KPIs. So really, to put a nice neat bow around it, it makes sense to bring it back to council and seek that retrospective endorsement for those KPIs. And as Mr Fletcher points out, there has been some amendment to the KPIs since council last saw this document. And now, if you look at page 34, you can see on that one page there the agreed upon KPIs between both parties. So CAP Enterprise through Mary Carroll, happy to deliver on those KPIs, and CHDC board and council, pending its support here today, are supportive of these KPIs being realistic and achievable.
So they are certainly being agreed to by Mary Carroll from.
Just one more. How much did we put aside for that this year? The 35, or did we go back to 50? Or
35.
we left it at 35?
Yeah.
And the Great Inland Way would come underneath that same thing that they're a member, council's a member of them.
I think we are a member. It doesn't have any funding attached to it.
Yeah, we pay it. There's only a couple of grand. We do pay
Oh, okay.
annually, and
Membership, I'm not sure the exact figure, but
it's
Are
not
we
very.
paying it or is it?
no, we pay it.
Yeah, right.
And it's council agreement because I attend those meetings and a council is a member. So it'd be the same scenario, but we don't have any MOU.
Yeah, there's no, yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is a unique arrangement. It came about, well, I think it was a combined CHDC, CHRC initiative to enter into an MOU so that we could see the value of that $50,000 investment at the time. And that's how the KPIs came about. And it's been reviewed such that it's now $35,000 is the value of our investment, and that page of KPI sets out the expectations.
Mr CEO, but I understand this document's already been executed by both parties back in June.
Correct.
And so that shouldn't really be drafted anymore.
No, it shouldn't be drafted.
And when does the $35,000 get paid in June?
I believe that the money's been paid. It has been paid, I know that. And it's to be paid as near as possible to the start of the financial year or the end of the last financial year, so that CAP Enterprise have got some assurance about what they can achieve for the financial year.
That happens in July.
All right, so but the MOU is executed in June, it's reviewed, like, that's how I understand it, like, the way this reads as well.
Well, this is a different MOU now because it had amendments to it. So the one that was supposedly endorsed or approved in June, I believe it was done before it came to council, is that correct?
It was.
So how come we now got this one? So which one are we operating under? The first one that you endorsed before it came to council, or this one here we're supposedly endorsing now?
If it's a retrospective approval, I thought we would be seeing the actual executed MOU attached to this report.
So this isn't it?
Good points. I think what we might do, if you're happy, Mr Mayor, is
Do it again.
if we move to another agenda item, we could bring back or circulate a hard copy of the executed document, so council has assurance.
But The KPIs are part of that executed document?
The KPIs that you see in your agenda are the agreed upon KPIs. I accept the administrative error in providing the draft as opposed to the executed document in the agenda item. So,
But my point is, if you executed a document in June, prior to it coming to council, I was the one that raised the issues with it, only then to find out that it was a wasted breath really, because it was already executed, I was led to believe. And now we've come back with another draft document, and take off the draft, I mean, that's just a technical error, I have to draft on it still. But now we've changed the KPIs in this document, so how can we change, even after all my arguing, how can we change the KPIs of a document that was already executed back in June?
well, the KPIs,
Not part of that agreement.
the first that council was aware of, this was brought to council's attention in the interest of transparency, just so you're aware of the existence of the MOU that was struck with CAP Enterprise. There was some resistance to some of the KPIs by CAP Enterprise. They put forward a good case. We've agreed to relax some of the criteria. KPIs have been agreed upon, and as I understand it, the document's been executed. KPIs are agreed by both parties, and it's here for retrospective endorsement. I would imagine that at the time that council got the document, it would have been executed by us, but not by CAP Enterprise, because they weren't happy with the KPIs. So
Well, that wasn't told to us. That wasn't told to us at that original council meeting. We were never told that CAP Enterprise hadn't signed their document. I raised issues about the KPIs at a personal level because I didn't believe in them, some of them. And we probably argued here for at least half an hour or more. And then it was drawn to my attention and the rest of the council that the document had already been executed and signed off by yourself, and I'm assuming that was as a CEO of council and not the chair of CHDC, as this document is our document, not CHDC's document. This is a council document, so it should come to us to be executed if it's our document.
well,
Unless you executed it on behalf of CHRC and not CHDC.
no, it's an agreement between CHRC and CAP Enterprise. Normally, I wouldn't bring this document to council.
I was told the year before it was, although I had spent 2 hours looking for it and couldn't find it, and I did ask for it to be shown to me.
I normally
which hasn't been done.
wouldn't bring it to council. In the interest of transparency and providing a bit more information to elected members, I made the choice that it should go before council. Never with the intention to have you approve the document. It was more around awareness. As I was on leave, I understand, as you pointed out, there was some contention around the KPIs and the process, and we are here today because of that. So this document is now being signed and agreed, and we're already acting upon it, and the money's changed hands, and I'm asking council for a rubber stamp today to retrospectively endorse what's happened. There might be some anomalies in timing and how things played out, but I'm picking up from this conversation that council might be interested in less autonomy from its CEO and more decision making in the boardroom here. And if that's the case, I'm more than happy to bring more things back to the boardroom for ultimate decision.
I think, Scott, it's just around communication, because I understand you were absent at the last meeting, so you weren't there to provide the level of clarity that you are articulating so well today. So that was absent in the last conversation when this came before us as an agenda item. And I think we were getting some pretty confusing messages about what had or hadn't happened, and certainly indication wasn't given to us that the document had already been signed and the KPIs agreed upon. But I think today, given that we are retrospectively endorsing a document that's already been signed, the money's been paid, you would just normally expect to see a copy of that actual executed document here. And I think that's probably what's missing for me today is what you actually signed is not here.
Because why have we changed it? So if the other document was executed with those KPIs, why have these KPIs been changed? I can't understand.
you've got one document that was signed off, sealed and delivered with certain lot of KPIs. There was a kerfuffle in council, and then suddenly the document goes back, KPIs are altered. And now this has come back, but the actual original document, you're telling me, is the signed off document. So which document are we working under?
And as I pointed out earlier through the Mayor Council software, the draft that appears in the agenda should be the actual with the signatures and dates on it. So we will rectify that during the course of this meeting and share that with council. KPIs are accurate KPIs. The way that this is unfolded, and I do believe it's fairly obvious, the RTO has to provide a service. They were providing that for $50,000 a year. An MOU has been instituted, which has been practiced for many years. KPIs are a more recent addition to that process to hold the RTO accountable for delivery. CHDC, active managers of that tourism budget portfolio, have determined that the level of service could be better. And one of the decisions made a while ago was to reduce the allocation from 50 to 35k to hone in or further develop the KPIs. And without a forensic audit, I would imagine what's happened is my signed version of the MOU has not been accepted by the RTO because of the onerous nature of some of the KPIs. There's been some resistance and an insistence by Mary Carroll, the CEO, to amend the KPIs. CHDC have considered those amendments, they've determined that they were reasonable, and they've agreed on the new KPIs. Now, overlaid against that was an innocent attempt to provide more transparency to council by saying, oh, hey, this sort of thing, maybe we should share this with the elected members so that they're aware of what's happening. Exactly. There was a kerfuffle of sorts, and kerfuffle is probably too strong a word, while I was on leave, and some real interest in having some involvement in those KPIs. And it's here today for retrospective approval. We will, if we can, Mr. Mayor, perhaps after the debate or discussion on the report, if we don't make a decision around it, and I can furnish council with a copy of the executed document, we might be able to revisit this meeting, otherwise we can look at it at the next meeting. But I suppose the more serious issue there, and I'll be guided by council, is more things can come to the meeting for approval, and less action taken if that's the move of council based on what's happened with
well, I just get the feeling, okay, when I admire you, you want it to be transparent. But when you put something up to be transparent, we have the right to question it. And that's all that happened. And now you're all defensive, saying, but I mean, we have the right to actually question things that come to this council. And that's all I was doing.
And the point's taken, and the administration under my leadership respects that role, and it interprets today's events as a call for greater autonomy at the council level and not necessarily the administration level. And I won't forget my place.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, through the Mayor. So it has already been executed, but this is the one that will be executed.
It's been executed through the Mayor. The KPIs agreed upon, and the money's changed hands.
But shall you both agreeing now to go for these new guidelines?
It's all done. I just need a rubber stamp to put a bow around it neatly, and I don't seek that now, Mr. Mayor, until I can provide you with a copy of the executed document for council's.
Well, I'd be going to move it that we accept this retrospectively and get signed off and report it back to us that it's been signed.
So, and as you would have known, the KPIs related to the number of members, and we just spent 3 days having your members tell you that they're leaving the RTO, or not signing up their membership. So that's why the original negotiation came back from 50,000 to 35,000, and those things put in there to get some sort of, I suppose, performance around that. So that's been conceded. So I guess there's a bit of irony in that certainly the KPIs now are reflective of what the community's been telling them that So is someone happy to move this? So hang on, just
I can circulate it if you like, Mr. Mayor. Just coming through now. We'll move on.
All right. Hang on, we'll circulate it and get it done, because I don't want to have this take more time than it has to.
No, I'll send it around now, councillors. You see the version executed. I will foreshadow that this is the version that's executed by me, and it's not the version with Cap Enterprise CEO signature on it, so this may be a roadblock.
So it hasn't actually, this one hasn't actually been signed off by both parties.
I don't know.
Well, if the first one was, the second one is irrelevant.
It is a bit of a merry-go-round, but look, why don't we, can we, Daniel, just find out, maybe we call the merry-go-round, and it's irrelevant, all right.
Okay, the second one is irrelevant if the first one has been signed off. But it wasn't signed off by both parties, was it?
Well,
Cap Enterprise hadn't signed the first one. Is that what you said?
they resisted the first one because they thought the KPIs were too onerous.
So that then it wasn't fully signed off, it was only signed off by you.
I've just sent you the second one.
So there's a second one again that was been signed.
That's been signed off by me, and it's inconclusive at this point in time as to whether or not it's been executed by the Cap Enterprise
So
CEO.
this one hasn't been.
So council's not satisfied, that's okay, we can seek confirmation and a copy of the document from Mary Carroll that's been executed. If it hasn't been executed, perhaps we move it to the next meeting.
Bill, the councillors don't want to move ahead with this, we'll just give you some indication to move on to something else. Honestly, we're just taking up the whole day talking about the front.
It's process though, Kerry, we're highlighting an incorrect process.
It is, but the agenda item's not dealing with the process, it's actually asking for something,
But
the
we're,
information provided, it's a document that it's been signed for how many years?
Many years.
So, and we had the discussion about the KPIs, that was a robust discussion, that was taken note of, it's been changed. Happy for councillors not to see it now and go to the whatever.
Could I move that we move on, but get a copy of the signed one back for future meetings?
yeah,
So,
I'm happy with that.
They get that done today.
So that's proceed, the next order of business doesn't require a second, it must be put to the vote to the
all right, so the copy, a signed copy for the next meeting. Moved by councillor Nixon, all in favour?
So what was the motion?
Council has noted that we proceed to the next order of business and that the council will be provided with a copy of the executed document. And that's a procedural motion, not required.
Procedural motion, so it doesn't need a second. So happy to do that, councillors, I'll take that vote again, all in favour? Against? Thank you.
And that does mean that it will be, brought back to council. We'll get it back.
Right. Approved the inspection program, page 35 of the agenda. And this is, Keys is here, and Daniel, you want to do the introduction, please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this report is a decision report before you. This report came through the Community Standing Committee initially, and we did not get unanimous support for approving the approved inspection program. So the approved inspection program has been undertaken in our region before, and we have some legislative requirements under section 33 of the local 133 of the Local Government Act, subsection 2, and in accordance with section 134 of the Local Government Act, we're required to get not only approval from council but to advertise the approved inspection program. So that's the reason we're bringing this for council's consideration and approval, and I'll Kirsten and Brett can detail the actual approved inspection program and what's required.
Through to you, Mr. Mayor. Ranger Services and Central Pinehurst City Council are looking to increase responsible pet ownership within the region, and as such we're looking to execute an approved inspection program throughout the region to target responsible pet ownership, minimum standards, excess animals, and secondary to animal registrations throughout the region. We're looking to do a minimum of 2 days a week with regards to this inspection program to try and capture all of the non-compliance throughout the area. This is mainly due to all the incidents of roaming animals, recent dog attacks and such, with a fairly high work rate for the rangers at present. So it's our intention to go out there and execute the AIP for the purpose of capturing all those non-compliance matters. At present, the stats on here, the last time we did the report with regards to this, we had impounded something in the vicinity of 690 dogs due to roaming matters. It's the expectation of the AIP that we'll try and reduce that number by enforcing the responsible pet ownership. When we brought this to council, Central Highlands Regional Council animal registrations were somewhere in the vicinity of 1,600 dogs that were registered. This week, what's today, Tuesday? Yeah, Monday I did a check to see how many animals had been registered, because the girls downstairs had advised me that they had a lot more people coming to register animals. We're now up to 2,050. So in just a couple of weeks, we've had a number of people come in due to word of mouth, due to us explaining that we're going out there and doing a lot more focus with regards to responsible pet ownership. So by executing AIP, we anticipate that we'll capture a lot more animal registrations and in turn influence a lot more registrations and pet ownership, responsible pet ownership through that process. Yeah, that's pretty much it we've got to. If we find people that aren't compliant with regard to our execution, we'll be issuing warnings and potentially infringements for non-compliance. So, depending on the level of non-compliance, will determine the level of discretion that an officer will execute with regards to enforcement of infringements. So if we get someone out there that is just completely non-compliant in a number of different areas, and just pushes back as hard as they can with regards to being compliant, then it'll be the instruction on the officers that they consider enforcement with infringements. At this point in time, we've issued a number of warnings in the last couple of weeks. We've issued in the vicinity of 11 infringements in the last week alone, with another potential 6 to go out. So the word's getting out with regard to non-compliance.
Yeah, sure. Just to extend on what Brett was saying before, the AIP will also enable us to check properties as well too, to make sure their enclosure requirements are up to scratch. So like we had incidents with dog attacks, when we've gone to the properties and investigated, often one of the biggest issues is that they have insufficient enclosure requirements for the animals that they're trying to keep, whether it's low fences or there's holes under the fences and things like that. So with the AIP, if approved, we would be starting in the outlying urban areas such as Doringa, Springshire, Capella, and Genfields, and then working towards Emerald, where we have the highest number of registrations. So like Brett was saying, the informal word is out there on the street that council is taking more of a focus on responsible pet ownership. So through the approval of the AIP, it just emphasises that position for us to drive that message home to the residents that they need to be responsible pet owners, and there are certain obligations that they must adhere to. If not, we will go through the motions with them to identify non-compliance and let them know what they need to do to become compliant.
You come to my place and see the dog house at the back, that's where I spend most of my time. I've got a dog.
Can I just draw your attention to the
Electric fence around.
legislative requirements through you there? In there it states section 136 of the Local Government Act 3134, there is actually another provision under the Animal Management Act, section 113, which authorises an approved inspection program. So initially it was the intention that we'd capture registrations through the Animal Management Act as a side note. However, through the advertising of this approved inspection program, we will also identify that under section 113 of the Animal Management Act that animal registrations will also be targeted. So it won't necessarily be a side capture, it will be a direct assault basically on animal registrations.
And further to that, through the Mayor, the Local Government Act requires us to formally advertise it. So prior to us undertaking an approved inspection program, if council resolves to allow that to happen, we do have to provide notification in the newspaper just to let people know that it is commencing. So that gives people a bit of an incentive to take the action before we actually hit the ground and go out and force. It might save us a bit of hassle, because when we go through the register of the dog ownership, it might limit the number of properties we have to go to. So we do have to advertise, and we will be engaging with the community to let them know it's happening. We won't give them specific dates of when we're going to be in certain areas, because we don't want them to obviously take actions that might prevent them from registering their animals. So.
All questions? Obviously, this is, I think, an appropriate response, and obviously, there's that significant dog attack in the Danfields 3 or 4 weeks ago. And as I say, as a reflection of ongoing activities that council had at some time, this is obviously purposeful. Now, in terms of resources, how are you going with, I guess, this is a pretty comprehensive program. How's that going to work?
It is, man, through you. I will update everyone with regards to that. We've had a recent arrival of another ranger to the area, which is going through the process of being authorised, receiving their instrumental appointment so they can go out and start assisting us with on the ground compliance and all the rest of it. So we are at full complement. This gives us the best opportunity to go out there and really see some results with regards to everything.
So this ranger, the new ranger that we've got, they are a logo appointee, so they are here for a period of time. And we do have the additional vacancy within the ranger team, which is being fulfilled. That's the maternity leave vacancy position that was created. So we did initially ask for budget in the 2017-18 budget for a contractor to assist with this process. Unfortunately, it was declined, but we're confident that the rangers delivering this program in-house will help increase the exposure of the ranger services within the community rather than relying on a contractor to come in. So at least it's the face of rangers, they're going to be the ones knocking on the door. So there is a timing position. So we had identified this approved inspection program in February when the former coordinator took the 9 initiatives plan to council, the community standing committee, sorry. So it has been on the agenda for some time to progress, and now that we're back on track with our resourcing levels, we're confident we can deliver it in-house.
You know, I guess I'm not trying to preempt what might be the outcome, but I mean, if there was several animals impounded, I mean, do you have the resources to look after them?
Yes, through to Mr. Mayor. It's not necessary that we have to impound animals. We don't possess a local law that authorises registration through the Animal Management Act. We operate under the Animal Management Act. So if we had our own amendment to local laws where we could enforce through minimum standard registration, then we'd have the ability to seize animals under that by way of executing a warrant on the address and then impounding the animal. However, as it stands at the moment, we don't have any authority or power to seize the animals for non-registration compliance. So as far as impounding animals, it won't impact on
this project.
Yeah.
All right, other councillors, any questions? Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, well, I'm the one that voted against it at the community meeting, so which brought it to this meeting. I got big concerns over it for many, many reasons, and the 11 infringements that you recently undertook, how did we come across those infringements?
A number of those were related to the attack out at the Gemfields with regards to non-compliance, registration, microchipping requirements. There was another recent attack in Blackwater which resulted in roaming infringements, non-compliance again, and there's been a couple of other registration infringements that have been issued.
So the types of non-compliance is what sort?
Pardon me?
The non-compliance that you say that there was non-compliance issues, what sort are they?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the non-compliance relates to actual compliance notices that are issued to a person for, say, roaming, minimum standards, and issues like that. So we issue a compliance notice under the Local Government Act, gives them a period of time to comply with the requirements that we give them, i.e. the minimum standards with regards to the Gemfields attack. That individual was given 14 days to comply. They didn't comply with the requirements of the minimum standards. They were issued a $600 fine for non-compliance, and the same has occurred in another non-compliance matter.
Yep.
So when it's roaming, minimum standards, i.e. fencing and the rest of it, we can issue compliance notices which requires them to comply with the minimum standards. There's 14 conditions. They only have to breach one, and then they receive a $600 fine. But the only time we can issue a compliance notice is when it relates to minimum standards. So AIP will capture some of that. With regards to registration, we only get to give them a warning, and then we give them a fine based on that. Essentially, we can't really force them to register unless we go through the process of issuing another obligation notice, and then it's up to discretion of the officer to issue another infringement if they don't comply within that 14 days. So this gives us the opportunity to go out there and not just go straight into someone's yard, knock on their door. If they have an animal, we're otherwise not interested in going in their yard. If we see an animal in the yard, like a dog or whatever, then we don't really have a need to go into their yard. Because we don't need to check their fencing, we don't need to check whether or not they pick up the mess. And if they don't have a dog, then we don't really have a requirement to go in there. Unless we determine that maybe there's a rooster or there's chooks, then we're going in there for the purpose of prohibited animals or excess animals. So this is where the AIP works in that sense.
Okay, so it's fair to say the 11 infringements came from CRMs.
They are reactive, yeah.
Yep. So we were tipped off through a CRM and we reacted. Correct procedure.
Yep.
And a good working procedure. Our highest ranking CRM is dog issues, and we're responding well now that we've been up. But now we want to go further and commence door knocking and further look into contravention of other local laws on top of just the dog as well,
So through you, Mr.
which
Ware.
is stable.
So we want to become more proactive in responsible pet ownership in that area. It also will help us when we shift to technology, one, in order to increase our data capture for the area. So if there are, for instance, an example, 3,000 animals within the region, 1,000 of them are unregistered. We don't know who has those animals and who may need to be targeted in terms of education, responsible pet ownership, or just even to get to the stage of reminder notices.
I'm sorry to cut in on you, but this is not going to do that, because Keezy just said, or Brett just said, that we'll just have a look over the fence, and if it doesn't look like anything, then we won't go in. So that's not going to improve Toto if you don't go in.
If they have animals, we'll.
Yeah, but how do you know from looking over the fence?
That's merely a suggestion. It doesn't mean that's how it's going to operate. If you hear, when you approach a house, you'll hear the dog bark or you'll smell it.
You won't.
You will.
Not if they're inside dogs.
You can smell it. So,
You're amazing. Anyway, are you doing industrial and residential?
not targeting industrial, no.
What, they don't have aggressive non-registered dogs?
The AIP does reflect region-wide, so it does give us the authority
Doesn't make
to.
sense.
Yep. Are you doing all 13 communities?
Yes, we are. So what?
Okay,
what
so
was-
that's around about $9,000, excluding rural properties. You've allocated 2 days per week over a 3-month period, which is only 280 hours, times 2 because they'll be together, which means that they've got to do around about 1 property per minute to capture in that time frame. And that's impossible in my figures, because you're doing a day out at a time. You're going to Doringa, 2 people to Doringa, 4 hours travel in total. They'll do 4 hours there. They'll go back to Doringa day 2 and the next week until they knock on every door. I can't see, there's nothing in here that gives me, if we conducted this 2 years ago, there is nothing in there to say how successful it was 2 years ago. There's nothing, but yet you've already said, just by talking, we've improved by 400. We're already doing our job without going door knocking and wasting money that's not budgeted for, that was discussed by this council not to budget, but you go on and do it anyway, or wish to go on and do it. And then if you look at the budget type, the very next agenda item is also a non-budgeted item that you want money for. But you'll take it from another resource within the department. If we're going to be councillors and we're looking at our efficiencies, what does this actually achieve? And that's the bit I don't get. If we were to put our resources into spraying Lakina on the side of roadways, if we were to put that into 48-hour ticket parking under the bridge or at Mackenzie Park and assist our local businesses or do whatever, I get it. But I just don't get what this will achieve. It didn't achieve anything 2 years ago when we did it, and it ain't going to achieve it in the budget, in the time frame, with the resources that you're explaining to me.
I'm glad you mentioned Lakina, because this is one of the reasons we want rangers being available to be able to do that. At the moment, they're not able to do that because they're too busy being reactive
The
to
CRMs
dogs.
are doing the job. The people who
That's
we
the
respond
problem.
well and we're finding out things.
That's the problem. There's too many CRMs that they've got to respond to about barking dogs. or a dog attacks.
But not dog attacks, there's not that many.
But there are.
Barking dogs is a lot, but this isn't going to improve the barking dogs.
Well, councillors, look, I think you made the point. I think the point here is that this is a proposal, and as councillors, you will get your chance to say whether you want to do this or not, and I respect the fact that you've alerted us to the budget consideration of both of those. So, does anyone want to speak to this proposal? Our officers have spoken to it. Councillor McIndoe's spoken against it, I guess you'd say, in some way, shape or form. Is there anyone that wants to speak to it? Because I'd like to put it as possible, please. Councillors, there's a motion there that says that we approve the request for Ranger Services to undertake an improved inspection of the area. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded. Seconded by Councillor Godwin Smith. All in favour? Against? 5-3 against, so the motion is lost. So that 5-3 or 6-3? 5-4. Right. I suspect Brett, you're still here now for the next agenda item, which is around sodium fluoroacetate, if I've said that correctly, which is 1080, that's abbreviated. So, lead away again.
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Ranger Services delivers varying services within the region, with one of these services being the assistance to rural landholders for the delivery of sodium fluoroacetate 1080 for the purpose of baiting. Rangers, Central Highlands Regional Council received a report with regards to the implementation of a mapping system to overlay with regards to the chimp, so that we can attempt to capture a real-time identification of who's baiting and where they're baiting. The information that we get with regards to 1080 is contained in the deed poll books that are filled out at bait sites during baiting. The information that can be contained can sometimes come back and be illegible. So part of this mapping process is to record a little bit more accurate the information that's contained in those books, and in turn develop a mapping system that we can overlay, as I said, to identify a real-time capture of where the baiting is occurring. It's anticipated that the mapping strategy will assist us in the future with regards to data capture and the retrieval of that information, and potentially pass it on to the likes of DAF and such, so that they can have a real-time capture of that information.
Just to extend on that, so as Brett said, mapping has never been undertaken before, so this is just the preliminary stage of where we're at in terms of consolidating those books that we have from the last 5 plus years that we have the data for. So moving forward, we will be keeping it in a secondary source electronically as well too, so that once those books fade with the carbon copy, we still have an electronic database. The ideal outcome is that we do get this imported into an overlay on chimp, so that anyone internally has access to it, so that they can see the trend over time with 1080 baiting, so that we can move on from there. So we've had discussions with Council's IS team about technology upgrades with the Toto project and what sort of mapping services will be available to us. So whether that is an overlay in chimp, or whether IS approves the Rangers' request for weed mapping, which was part of the operational plan last year and is an ongoing item for this year. So we just want to make sure we're capturing the data as best as possible. So from the attachments, you'll see the way it's been mapped. So it does get quite confusing when there's multiple properties that have been baited on multiple years, so they are just hashed out for clarity. And so each of the colours, if you've got a colour version in front of you, represents the year that those properties were baited, and then the hashing represents multiple years where baiting has occurred. So it would be great if this was a chimp overlay, so that we could zoom in on particular properties, but at the moment all we have is this interactive PDF where you can zoom in on the different regions. So it's a step in the right direction in terms of mapping 1080 baiting, but it is just the starting point for us.
No, it looks very comprehensive. Councillor, any questions or comments? Like Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, just I'm not really interested in the mapping very much, because I think videos are everywhere. But what I am raising is the fact that this came up at our community consultation. I think it was Mount Ball, was it? Or
Mount Ball.
At Mount Ball, that they want 1080 baiting done ASAP. Have we got anyone that can carry out baiting at the moment? Because I think if someone is prepared to contact those people out there, they'll soon get their notice together because they want baiting done now. So have we got staff to actually carry out baiting activities in 1080?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have been undertaking 1080 baiting since the start of the season. So if landholders get in contact with council and they get together with their neighbouring landholders, we'll certainly offer up those services in partnership with them.
So I could have put Mount Ball forward as someone to contact them, please, to arrange some baiting for them in that area.
Stuart Donaldson.
Well, I think we did say that Red obviously was leading it. I think Fiona might have said that we were in the process of engaging when there had been a tender in some of the work as well. Is that correct?
As far as baiting,
Baiting considered.
we are in the process of baiting. There are baits going out every week. There's there's an officer going out tomorrow to do some baiting. I'm not sure of the location. Last week there was 2 days of baiting. So I will be happy to contact that particular landholder and make arrangements for that to occur. But if I haven't seen a CRM, I couldn't tell you if it's been done yet. But contact is that Donaldson?
Yes, Stuart.
Sure, Donaldson.
I know his brother. So
Yeah, several brothers,
yeah.
Thank you. Someone might be able to instigate a CRM. Thank you.
Well, yeah, normal process would be for the landholders to get in contact with our ranger services team and they get they nominate a date and we see if we're available on those dates to ensure that the baiting happens. So if they're interested, but we on this occasion will contact the respective customer.
Probably room for us to Mr. Mayor to promote that process and service a little bit more. I know that in the past, the Ranger Services team had a lot of contacts, I suppose, so they were regularly talking to landholders. The composition of the team's changed over time, which is normal and natural. So I think we might have lost some of those contacts, probably made new ones as well, but if we can somehow promote through our networks that process, an opportunity we can encourage more people to come forward rather than, wait. We can initiate a little bit.
Sorry, Councillor Locke.
Kirsten, Fred, how are you going to do this mapping strategy without contacting the landholders?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so nothing has been completed from the 1080 baiting that has already happened. So when we have it registered,
We capture the data through the deed poll books, which is the books that are issued, so they used to be called indemnity forms, as I understand it, 1080 baiting. The information is contained in there. They have lot of plan numbers, the date that it was executed. We captured that information from the deed poll, and that's how we've constructed this mapping layout. So that's where we get the information from.
so it doesn't propose any lots that are going to be baited. This is simply capturing the data from what we have in our books of what properties have been baited. So if there are more properties out there, as the CEO suggested, maybe we need to do a bit more exposure about the services we offer, so that more people can come forward and they can get amongst the services that council offer.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, Mr. Mayor, that the earlier way that it was done years ago was in a coordinated manner, so it was a big push on the right time of the year. All right, landholders, it's that time of the year. I know you've got plenty of other important work that we've got to conduct, an en masse approach to baiting to get an effective result. So, we used to basically rally the numbers and do it that way. And I think over time, and as part of it is the team changing, we've lost it a little bit. I think because it won't be hard to turn that back. And I understand that there's a move to reconsider the reconstitution of rural services meetings, but there's other networks that exist where we can connect in with landholders. But it might be as simple for me. I'm coming from it's a council coordinated or initiated service, and that might be something we can articulate websites, flyers to rural landholders in the rates notices. Every year you want to be part of the coordinated baiting program, this is what it looks like, this is how you can get involved, this is a contact, that sort of thing. We've got to reconnect with rural people because we've lost a lot of staff that already had those long established connections. Yeah.
And through the chair, I was going to ask, outside of if you did have a coordinated dating program, so it was like a set period or multi-periods during the year, outside of that, you can buy dog on baits, or landholders can buy them through set prices.
That's correct, yeah. They can come and purchase dog on, box off, all that sort of business, and do ad hoc baiting as they please when they contact us. Just further with regards to the officers that are available, I have initiated communication with DAF with regards to training officers and myself. So I'll also be going out there and doing it. I've done it before in Longreach, and it is an issue that is obviously in areas like this, it is a big problem. So we will have the officers trained up again. We will have again full complement of officers that are qualified and skilled in that process. So.
No, that's excellent. That's good news.
Just a technical question. Those people that go to places like 8 Acres Rural and buy baits, preloaded baits, are they the dog on? What are they?
That's it.
Yeah. Is that captured in your system as well? Are they still got to get a permit to put the baits out, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the other issues with regards to the baiting, which I explained in the report. We can't capture all that information, because there are other agencies that offer the services, so they can get their baits through DAF, they can get them through other agencies, other qualified agencies, so we can't capture all the information. We can only capture the information that we've retained in baiting processes that we've been a part of. So we're only capturing our information, we're not capturing everyone's information, and that's why, as I said, if DAF were interested in it, they can contact us and we can provide that information to them. But DAF haven't shown a great deal of interest with regards to the baiting, because the fact that the information is only retained for 2 years, so it doesn't go back far.
I mean, I don't know why, I guess we're mapping, it's a nice to have, why we're mapping if we've only got half the information, I guess it's, I mean, does it influence, I guess, if we map something, does it influence our programs for the future?
It can do. I might jump in there if we can, Mr. Mayor. Local government used to be great at data collection and mapping, even when we look at preset payments or dog bonuses were paid. We caught all that information, where those scalps came from. We mapped that. We had databases. We knew where the hotspots were. Sure, some people might have not provided the right RPD, a lot of plan number, but we had this wealth of knowledge around where the issues were. That's just animal pests, but also with our plant pest infestations. And with the advent of technology, it seems we've lost our way a bit, because we've got better ways of capturing data and displaying it, but we don't have the data anymore. So it's like the art of collecting all of that at the right point. And even as you talk, it makes you think that if the retailers of the baits we're happy to provide some basic information, we could, enrich some of that data as well, so you get a bit of an idea. It is good to have an idea of what's happening in your regional council area, and if you're seeing that a particular area, say that one area of your council is doing the right thing, they use their own initiative, they don't rely on the council coordinated program, they've been doing what they've been doing for years. Well, if we're about to embark on a program, we might leave that area alone because it's been well treated, and we might focus on another area where there might be smaller landholders that aren't as well resourced or organised to do it. So I think this is a good report that shows that there's lots of gaps in information, but we've got what we've got, and if we can build on that and start to collect more, we can get back to what local government was good at, and that was having accurate data around these plant and pest animal issues. So I think we've got to keep at it. And the data will become more useful in time in ways that we can't even imagine yet, so long as we attempt to collect the data, build the data, and we can work out how we can best use it later on. But for now, it's about, for us, I think it's more about reconnecting with rural landholders and making sure we understand what the needs are, and if we can coordinate baiting programs, that's a key role the council can play, get on top of the population problems.
Right, well, the recommendation to the council is that report on the initiative is received. Does someone want to add something to that? I mean, on the basis of,
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. I'd like to also include some of what Scott was alluding to it and how we can better, put that in the program of works there, to how we can improve on that with local distributors and incorporate that into it, because as Councillor Daniel suggested, it's only half a opportunity, and we need to find ways that we can, one, better assist the likes of Landmark or those sort of people that can assist us, and it may be that, we can piggyback off some of their stuff and they can piggyback off some of ours and get the result that we want, and that's a better biosecurity region. So, yeah,
And
I don't
this,
think you can incorporate that into that.
no, I don't know, but I just want to see that in the initiative, that we go further ahead and expand on it into the local area.
Are the maps publicly available? Because these, I can see these being useful to other landholders to know what.
Due to, through you, Mr. Mayor, due to Privacy Act, we can't make this information readily available, so I've got to err on the side of caution with regard to how we publish this, because if people get wind of this and they start making writing information applications to get this information, it could have all sorts of ramifications, and I really would be cautious about providing this information publicly.
Well, it is, it's
It
an
is now.
agenda.
It is one of the
But not available on a commercial basis.
No.
And I think that's one of the challenges with these private betas, is whether or not they'll consent to giving us that information so that we can update our database and capture it as being privately bought bait. So that means the landholder will have to consent to their data being given to council, who isn't the state government who looks after 1080 baiting. So there would be some challenges, but we can definitely investigate it to see what we can do to capture more information.
and so through the chair, so this database or this mapping program will be able to capture weeds. That's a positive. If we
Yeah.
have something that's really good.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do capture weed spraying when we are out and about, so there are GPS coordinates. Unfortunately, we just don't have the mapping software database to input that information in. So we have been discussing this with IS since late last year in terms of the capabilities of the program, the software that we're proposing, to see if it is compatible with Toto, so that we can input that information and then we actually have a database to capture all of that. So at the moment, it's just GPS points. If we lose that GPS unit, all of our data capture is gone. So it's in our best interest to get that software, something that will.
Just on that, Mr. Mayor, advice to Kirsten and the team, it might be useful to tap into the NRM groups, because if we share our data, if we can, subject to privacy issues, but if we can share our, particularly the plant pest infestation data, I know that they have the mapping tools and software available to track infestations and how they're changing over time. So that might be useful as well. So even if we have limitations and our own group may not, if they can get access to some of their info, other considerations.
All right.
Happy to, I think.
So, if councillors, rather than change it, I mean, happy to receive this as an interim, and then you've made a lot of suggestions, I'm sure the team will pick up on that. So someone has to move it, moved by councillor Daniel, second by councillor Rolfe, that we received that report. All in favour?
I offer it to you.
Again? Thank you.
Oh, sorry, no.
8-1.
I wasn't against. I was just slow reaction.
All right, thank you, Kirsten, thank you, Brett. I think that's one all there, mate, for your section. Councillors, Corporate Services, our monthly financial report. Margaret and Wayne are here. Margaret, you'd like to do the introductions, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. Today we table the first financial report for this financial year. It provides a snapshot of the council's financial performance, complies with relevant statutory obligations, and also is intended to provide some additional information to keep councillors informed of relevant matters. In summary, we had a budgeted deficit of 7.9 for the end of July, and we actually have an operating deficit of about 6.8. Our revenue is above budget by approximately $170,000. Our operating expenditure is below by approximately 1.1. Our federal assistance grant, the remaining 50% will be paid in quarterly instalments from August through to May next year. I'll get Wayne to talk to a bit of the detail. I just thought I'd briefly touch on some of the highlights within the report. Encouraging, again, around our outstanding and overdue rates is that we've had a reduction by approximately 1.2 million compared to the same time last year. And just a small point of note, in the toolbox meeting I had with the rate staff earlier on this week or last week, I can't recall, one of the staff was telling me that people are now thanking rate staff for reminding them about their payment plans. They're actually getting thanked for it rather than have that level of angst on them. So it just reminds them and prompts them to, which is fabulous. On the converse, that being a positive note, is our, on the face of it, when we look at page 51 of the agenda, our capital spend there doesn't particularly look good in terms of our total deliverability, in terms of only having spent 2% where we should probably spend around 8%. But from a timing perspective, when we come to you within a fortnight for VR1, we'll have some updated cash flow projections that that should give you a little bit more confidence that we will have some heightened activity from probably around September, October onwards, and will put us in a far better position to have that capital budget spent by the end of the financial year. And I'll hand it over to Wayne now to talk to the detail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's probably not a great deal more to add at this point in time of the year. The main thing is that currently we're tracking similar to how we were at this time last year. It's a big push generally to get through to the end of the financial year, and then from there it seems to take a little bit of time to get momentum moving forward. There's about $9 million out of the capital works delivery from that was previously budgeted to be completed by the 30th of June that hasn't been completed, and we'll be looking at carryovers as part of the VR1. That's the main focus. With the end of year adjustments for accruals of revenue and expenditure, some of the invoices that were received and paid in July related to the previous period have been recognised against those that budget rather than this year, and so some of the adjustments that we do at the end of June are not done for the rest of the year. So that can partly explain some of the variances in the expenditure. But generally, it's a little bit early for trend analysis at the moment. But as I said, we're just tracking similar against the same period last time. Happy to take any questions.
Questions, anyone? Just these early days in the year. I suppose it would be obligatory to mention that you did raise it, Margaret, that obviously we've only spent 2% of our capital, and we have an ordinary bad habit of not getting off to a good start, like a bad racehorse. And I mean, you know, I hope that our departments understand that, you know, this is going to be improved.
Might like to comment, Margaret, in relation to the report that council will receive next month around delivery. You want to make a reference to that?
Yes, thank you, CEO, and through the Mayor. Gerard may want to make a comment around this. We have been working between basically Gerard and Corporate Services. We've been looking at some options for an alternative delivery model, getting some external assistance to help fast track our planning, design and construction aspect of our fairly large capital budget. So Gerard is bringing a report within the next, when is that, Gerard?
Through the Mayor, councillors, we are to market with a hybrid procurement model to a handful of consultants. That tender is currently open, and I was hoping to virtually bring it when we're ready to make a recommendation. But I can update councillors before that, and then just bring the final report to council consideration. Or as I said, I can simply bring it on. I want to be placed on record as saying that We don't necessarily have to accept any of these tenders. There has to be a demonstration of value for money. So I'm strongly or heavily qualifying this is uncharted territory for any of us involved in the process. So I'll really want to see what comes in and then do a fair value for money assessment as to whether this is the right way to go ahead. So it's up to council and they want a briefing on the proposed model and all of the plan to consider everything.
We've got it set up for next month, Gerard, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's an interesting one, and at the risk of repeating what's already been said by both the Mayor and Gerard, when you add the $9 million carryover, it takes us up to about 100 million that we've got to spend in 52 weeks, and we're already 7 weeks in, 7 plus, nearly 8 weeks in. And we have to spend, if you look at it in a linear manner, we have to spend $1.9+ million every week without fail. So what Margaret's offered is, at the next meeting, we'll show you the projected cash flows, because there's nothing worse from a councillor's perspective to sit nervously and wonder whether or not the racehorse is going to pick up speed or not. So we need to see how big those months are going to be, knowing that, you know, December traditionally things taper off, January's a slow start. So you need to see where those big spends are to have confidence in myself and my team and this hybrid model that Gerard refers to in delivering what we committed to the community through the budget process by June 30. So I think we anxiously wait for it, but we'll have the cash flows for the next meeting and information on the hybrid model during the month of September. So we've got a lot to achieve. $100 million is a heck of a lot.
Yeah, and I think we did highlight that when we were doing budget, was that, you know, be realistic about what we can spend and don't wish for. But we still went for big projects.
We've still got to get in and spend.
Exactly.
But those cash flows are important because you can see a commitment that the organisation is giving on a month-by-month basis to what's going to happen and when, and then it's an accountability tool. So when we look at the figures that come in for the end of August and end of September, we can see if we're on track or not. And there could be reasons why we're ahead of schedule or we might be behind, but there could be good reasons for it. And that's the sort of discussion we should have, not one about how we're at the risk of repeating behaviour and it doesn't look like we'll get there. It's a new era where we must believe what we commit to, so a bit more information coming to council on that.
Sorry, Councillor Nixon.
Just one short query about the Works for Queensland. This is Works for Queensland 17-19, is that it's going to continue, or is this 17-19, is there another lot coming up 18-19?
It's just the next tranche that I'm aware of.
It's over 2 years.
Yeah.
This is kind of it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 17-19 is just the indicative timeframe over which the 18 months or so that we've got to deliver it. So once it was announced, we had it through until the 30th of June 19 to deliver it. So, so that's where the 17, whether there'll be another tranche will depend on the government and their budget discussions.
Yeah, no, well, just my suggestion was twofold. Whether there is another one kind of 18-19 going forward, and also we should be looking at a list of things that need to be done rather than wait until too late when we're kind of just grabbing things. So I think that could be part of our project kind of plan too, that these are little community grant things that fix up a lot of our problems. So it'd be good to have a nice list of them as well ready. So that's just points I want to make, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Well, the recommendation is there that monthly financial report be received. Moved by Councillor Sypa, second Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Margaret. An update on the Belcarra legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, the report tabled in front of you today, which I have Chris Houston as the Manager of Governance sitting here to support me with the detail, is provided to you to provide an overview of the amendments to the Local Government Act following the Crime and Corruption Commission's Belcarra report. The governance officers continue to review the council governance framework and policies. Also to provide advice on administrative arrangements relating to the Public Interest Disclosure Act. And also to provide advice on the publication by the Crime and Corruption Commission of the report Culture and Corruption Risks in Local Government, referred to as the WINDI report, and also the progression of operational risk management assessments. I can just ask Chris Houston to please talk to the detail of the report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Good afternoon, councillors. I was asked to simply prepare a report on the status of the Operation Belcarra implementation program, but obviously it runs into other things such as the CCC reporting to Ipswich. I guess it's also part of our integrity process. There's also the requirement to upgrade review our PIDS legislation, our PIDS compliance. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to look at it, generally our governance position holistically, if you like. So each one sort of rolls into each other, but I'll just give a little bit of a breakdown on each one of them. I appreciate that you've had some discussions, I believe, with King & Co and King Fines Creek, particularly in relation to Operation Belcarra. I believe there's been a workshop about conflicts of interest. There was obviously, following that, a template developed, I believe, that's being used by this council and several other councils now. However, there's still, despite the fact that the legislation was passed in May, there's still a training down to be provided to the wider local government community in Queensland. I spoke to the department about a week, 10 days ago, and they actually not launching the education program until the 3rd of September in Rockhampton. As I stated in the report, they're available on the 4th of September to provide training to this council at this location, and probably include the councillors from Warrabinda as well, I believe. So that's just a bit of where we are there. I guess I know that you've considered your standing policies, your standing meeting policies, and I think you've considered the code of conduct previously. But I guess at this stage, until we have that training and understand exactly what the full implications are, the police are in a better position to go through and then revise any models, if that's what the council's wish is, and subsequently adopt them, I would imagine, in the not too distant future. That's about the Operation Belcarra. As I said, if you start looking at the wider impacts of the review processes over the last 12 months, you can see that there's a list of policies and processes that we have in place here, as indeed most councils do, which actually I refer to as our integrity framework. There's probably close to 20 policies there. A lot of them have been reworked in the last few months. Some of them do require another review, both because of the sands of time, if you like, and also because of legislative changes in some of the statutory requirements. Probably one that's really worth pointing out there is the Public Interest Disclosure Act, which is a convoluted way of what most people refer to as the whistleblowers legislation. We have policies and processes in place. They're not easy to follow, not because of this council's processes, but because that's just the way the legislation is. The government has actually taken that on board themselves, and the Queensland Ombudsman, who has carried to the legislation, is currently reviewing the models, if you like, the policies which have to come out of that legislation. There's one in place now which is, like I say, very, very bureaucratic, long-winded process, about 15 pages, which nobody can really understand. They've recognised that and they've tried to simplify it. They've actually circulated some draft policies for discussion that close on the 31st of August. I've had a review of them and I've spoken to the Ombudsman's office. It would appear to me as though they're not particularly revolutionary. They do explain a lot more details what the requirements of the council are. So what I expect would be that we would bring those back to the council for consideration and possible adoption, probably not for a few months, because our current policy has also been reviewed by my predecessor, Cale, and he's done a lot of work on that. In actual fact, it would go a long way to actually satisfying some of the state's new requirements. I spoke to the Ombudsman's office. They're aware of the work that Cale's done, and they said if we actually proceed on that basis there, we're probably in pretty good stead for some time anyway, so that's what I've been proposing to do, subject to discussions with the CEO and the GM. The final one is the Fraud and Corruption Framework. Again, they all roll into each other, but I'm sure everybody's familiar that the Queensland Audit Office undertook a audit of local government probably 18 months, 2 years ago, and they were quite scathing. And part of their recommendations were that local government should go through and have a more mature approach to risk assessment and development of fraud and corruption risk registers. We have started that process in Central Highlands. You have a strategic risk register, which has six strategic risks, and they're part of your operational plan. Subsequent to that, we've actually started rolling it out throughout the entire organisation. At this stage, we've had a risk register developed for the operational area of Peters over there, the water supply, water education supply. That is just being finalised now. What we propose to do is to then develop operational risk registers across the wider council. In fact, we had a workshop with about 30 officers earlier today. So from there, those risk registers will be developed on one-on-one workshops, and we've also proposed to incorporate in that a particular focus on fraud and corruption exposure. As I say, the QAOs highlighted that, the CCC certainly highlighted that, and in their paper last week, Operation Windage, into the activities in the City Council, they identified the lack of a risk register as one of the contributing factors to the latest incidents found itself in. So I think we're pretty well, in pretty good stead there at the moment. So I guess in final, just to sum up, what we propose to do is continue to review those policies, bring them back as required, bring the public interest disclosure procedure and policy back probably at the next council meeting, and continue to review the investigations policy, the code of conduct policy, subsequent to the workshop with the department on the 4th of September. Happy to take any questions.
Yes.
We'll probably just have some after the workshop.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Sorry?
They're probably.
I'm looking forward to the workshop.
I think, Chris, I think after the workshop, we can then come back to Leadership and Government Sustaining Committee and work on any through that rather than through.
That's the normal process, yes.
So it's, we're waiting for the workshop.
The integrity, the investigation commission doesn't start, I think, until December. Well, the other changes in relation to conflicts and all that are presented in May. So, but.
Well, I guess, Chris, on that basis, we'll get to that. Thank you very much for the update, clearly, and certainly I know you referenced Cartlab, and I know you're following on from his good work, so that probably makes it pretty easy. So, look, we'll obviously pull that workshop on. We'll obviously be working, I suppose, opportunity with some of the legislation, and that's when we'll probably have some questions, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyhow, the recommendation is there that we receive that information report. So, someone happy to move that. Moved by Councillor Godwin Smith, seconded by Councillor Rock. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Lauren. Right. Bit of money come on down. Councillors, we're on page 63, which is our urban water restriction levels. Yes, and finally, by Peter Gerard, you might introduce Peter.
Councillors, through the mayor, councillors, I think there's probably three key topics for discussion in here. Is currently where we at was Faber Dam, in other words, some water and bulk supply to high, medium, low customers. Our drought management plan, which we will speak to, and then the broader conversation, which is something that we probably won't go into too much depth, is how do we deal with the messaging around conservation, water conservation, and restriction without being alarmist. In any case, Peter, over to you, please.
Good afternoon, through the mayor. So this is just an information update, picking some of the eyes out of the current drought management plan. So the plan actually has kind of two purposes. One is that we have the general level 0 water restrictions, which is to generally encourage water conservation. And then as our water sources decline in volume, we have trigger levels to increase the restriction levels. So attached to the report is that extract out of our drought management plan. So yes, currently I've just had a look that from the time of writing this report, we're now at 21.3% in Fairburn, but it went up a little bit over the weekend. Not much, but a little bit.
So would have thought it would have gone down on it.
Yeah, well, it was going down, but there were, I don't know, it might be 0.5% or so into it. So Rolleston and Capella, as having their own dams, have restriction level based on those. So Rolleston's, Capella's touch under 40% at the moment. We're on level 1 restrictions there.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Excuse my ignorance on this one, but level 1 water restriction, that's not just your normal alternate days, is it? Was that what that is?
No, level 0 is our base level, which
Okay,
is
so
the normal
level
alternate
1,
days.
what's that?
So level 1 is still alternate day, but you're not allowed unrestricted access to sprinklers.
Right.
So there's a tighter time band at level 1, and then level 2 is no unattended sprinklers.
Got it. Thank you.
So the other towns are all currently in the plan just based on the level in Fairburn, which is used as a surrogate for drought levels in general across the region. So yes, obviously we're at 21%, and our when it gets to 15% is the trigger for us increasing our water restriction level through the rest of the region. Really once we get close to that point, we'll start considering when to implement that and what sort of messaging to put out. We obviously, in the legislation, have the right to restrict, put these restrictions in place. So once we get a bit closer, we'll start to think what sort of education we put out to the public. What I haven't included in here is, it is an offence under the Act to not comply with water restrictions, and I'm trying to go back through all council agendas to work out quite how the pond level was set and whether it's still in place. Happy to take any questions, but it's just information to update this report.
Oh, Councillor Daniel.
Oh, so was it someone else? No? Can you just, what does EP stand for? It's just, that was my first one.
Okay, equivalent persons.
Okay.
So, normally the reporting we do against some of the other things is strictly against the population of the town, but an EP is taking businesses and industry into account, but each property is equivalent to a set number of people.
And is there any, do you have any sort of projections around, I know if there's no more rain between now and whenever, when we'll reach this first trigger point at all?
I haven't worked that out, but obviously with the allocation this year, the high priority users, which is like us and industry, typically we've got 100% of our allocation, but the medium priority users only got 6%. So that slows down the consumption from the dam, because the main use out of the dam is irrigation. But meeting with Sunwater, I was at week before last, possibly as low as 12% by Christmas. It depends on
Obviously.
irrigators using water.
And so then we move into water restrictions at that point in time.
Yeah. The regional, when we had worked with the Department of Water Supply and did that regional water supply security assessment, Emerald, which was maybe 2 years ago now, that's shown that our restriction levels don't have as much of an impact on stopping the outflow from the dam as the actual scheme rules of, as they stop giving people 94% of their allocation. That has a bigger impact than the council's water restrictions, because we're only like 4% of the dam use.
Just for information, because it's a great opportunity to put it out there, is that also in terms of Emerald itself, water consumption, we are the client or user. So we have to factor that in as well, that we essentially are the biggest user in town.
Council.
Yes, of both raw water and potable water. I don't want to quote figures, but if we are talking about leading by example, that's just something to take on board. The other key point is we have, via the internal audit committee, made a commitment to review our drought management plan in any case during this financial year. So we'll see if there's a need to change any of these current drought management plan requirements as it stands. So that is, and that will be adopted again when we bring it back to council. So that is a piece of work happening specifically with the drought management plan. I'm spoken a bit, which I'm looking at comms, is how do we put a message out in general terms about water restrictions and what it means without being alarmist, and also without necessarily suggesting, we're in dire straits and
I'll send it through to comms, but I saw a really good infograph when I was in Brisbane from SEQ Water around usage, and just so people
think about it.
Well, it is, but it also put it in, whatever, flushes and toilets and washing machines and that sort of understanding of litres per person per day. But I guess the other thing I was thinking around is, what's our policy around the use of grey water, or if people want to start, if they think that this is going to be ongoing dry, if they want to put a rainwater tank in the urban area. So if we can make that information available, people start to self-regulating themselves.
Maybe just to Peter. Peter, can you get some water to maybe give you a graph, or maybe they've got a couple of models that would look at the usage of the water, and understanding that conversations I've had with a few irrigators, that they are planning, they are weighing up, getting into it, and it's probably expecting some inflows next year, and things will be different for them. All of that means that there will be, and I know that it's the operational model that Fairburn, Sunwater have got for Fairburn Dam, that is to be very aggressive in the uses of irrigated water and using it, using as much as possible, as quickly as possible, whatever. So understanding that, I would be really interested to see when they believe that without the inflow, when we will hit the 15%. Without the inflow, probably even say early New Year, January, February, March, where would we be at? And they must have some modelling of that done, because and they will know, I think, what the anticipated demand is from their irrigators anyway. And I mean, in that dam at the moment, there's a bit of carryover, so which I think the irrigators are using this year anyway. So
yes,
we pull that out and just tell us exactly, probably what do you think it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I can certainly ask that question.
I just circulate it if you just send it again.
And I know they took longer to announce the allocations this year because they were very careful in trying to work out what is carrying over, what's in the dam.
Yeah.
they should have.
So if they got that and just say, oh, no, we can't see it, they could send it to us, that's the idea, then it's the worst case scenario, I suppose, we're looking at.
Any other questions? All right, well, there's a recommendation that we received that information as well. Someone having to move that? Moved by Councillor Nixon, second by Councillor Whitmore. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And you may as well stay right there. Raw water sales for domestic use, 14.2, page 74.
You might as well take it away.
Purpose of this report is, you know, I guess leading on from that previous one, that, you know, medium priority customers will so far only receive 6% of their allocation for this water year, depending on, obviously, if we have inflows over, you know, later in the year, that may increase. But we've had an inquiry from one of the small pipeline schemes as to whether, you know, council may make some of our allocation available under the seasonal trading. Typically, we, you know, later in the year, once we, you know, see what dam levels are and how much of our water we used, how much we might want to carry over, we then make that decision as to whether we will trade. Typically, we've done that in larger blocks which are purchased by irrigators, so the fees and charges at the moment say we need to do that by auction. So if we wanted to make it available in smaller blocks for domestic, people using that solely for domestic use, we could change that sale method under the fees and charges. But in consideration of that request, I believe the risks are, you know, in terms of equity, how many people would we try and open this up to, and, you know, there are some hundreds of stock and domestic type users on the scheme. Currently, there is water still being traded in the market, so my recommendation is that it's too early in the year for us to be looking at how much water we might have spare to trade. And as there are other, you know, there still is water for sale, there are other places rather than council to be purchasing water from. And, you know, if we, you know, it's too soon to see where the dam's going yet, and we might want the water in town. So, you know, my recommendation is that we don't do this at the moment. So, happy to take questions.
Is this what you were talking about the other day, the last meeting, Kerry? It is that? Right.
We don't specifically want to mention schemes or.
No, I just want to know if it's the same scenario.
It's the same application or request, and just to give context, there is one of my employees who's on a scheme for non-domestic use, and they had to buy, or they wanted to buy additional water, and they paid, what was it, 400? So they pay market price to top up what's non-domestic, non-potable water. So at the end of the day, we just have to see where we sit in the scheme scenario of providing raw water for domestic use or for any use. And we had a successful trade at the end of last financial year, but it's a bit early in the year for us to go into that territory. And there's always the potable tank, a scenario which a lot of our rural residential property owners currently rely on to provide themselves with domestic water. So,
any other questions? Cool.
Just, do we have a different price tag for those people that get raw water? Have we got any means to give people raw water, like by the tanker full?
Well, that probably wasn't the way this was requested. This is whether we, you know, trading allocation. So
yeah, I realise that that's what this is about, but I'm just wondering, like, if anyone came in and actually wanted a tanker of raw water, We haven't actually got a standpipe with raw water, have we, or a
Yes. Yeah, we do. That's a service that some private operators provide. So they regularly gain access from different communities.
Yeah, just want to clarify that so that
We
we
don't
actually.
specifically have a raw water supply point anymore.
I'm so sorry.
But, correct, potable water, yes, but we don't provide raw water. We don't have a farm that people do, that we utilize contractors and raw water is when we do road construction. So that's a totally different conversation because we draw from water points across the region and not from our standpipes. It's any time that we like.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, councillors, will that recommendation, is there someone happy to move that? Moved by councillor Goldsmith, seconded councillor Brindleton, all in favour? Against? Thank you.
Can you declare the vote, please, Mr. Mayor?
All in favour?
Yes.
Against? Yeah, good.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Well, we he's going to be here, so we'll give him.
Right. Thank you, Peter. 15.1 is the Central Islands Development Corporation service level agreement. Are you going to do that, Mr. CEO?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Despite several attempts to contact the acting general manager of the CHDC, we've been unable to amend the document to the standard that would be keeping the council considering it today. So I asked Lee that I present that report at the next council meeting. Mr. Mayor.
Do we need to resolve to do that?
No, I just deferred, procedural motion to defer to the next meeting.
I'll move. I'll second.
Yeah, just move by councillor Nixon, all in favour? Against? Thank you. Right. Page 98, which is the CEO's National Economic Development Conference.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, at the time of writing this report or putting this report on the agenda, I've had second thoughts and perhaps it's best served for this to be a CHDC board matter for consideration. However, it's here and I'm quite happy for council to consider it in the published agenda. There is an opportunity for council and or CHDC to be represented at the upcoming National Economic Development Conference, which will be held from the 16th to the 19th of October at Rockhampton. And this report explains that opportunity, details costs involved, and recommends that council consider being represented at that event. So
I suspect councillors could be represented here, notwithstanding the fact that some CHDC.
Busy time, isn't it? Isn't there the San Francisco and
Bill,
Mr. CEO, there's no program at all available, no high level indication of what might be on the agenda.
It's only just a snapshot of day one, day two, but it doesn't really
I'll
elaborate what's
have
happening.
another look and see if there's something out there.
It says that it's not yet available.
At the time we were writing the report.
Was there any councillors actually interested in?
I would be interested in going, I wouldn't need accommodation, if that makes it a bit cheaper.
I've only got the high level program, but I'll just, yeah, you've got the same. Yeah, no, it's just got the broad program.
So councillor Goldsmith has indicated the board is to go.
Oh, hang on, no, sorry, councillors. So it does give me a download time to see if there's something. Yes, there is a 6-page program available. I'll endeavour to cover off on the high points, but it's not downloading very fast. IT issues.
Could be something we could talk about tomorrow, reaching anything important.
Or we could put it on the next agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Well, council's happy to do this and then go through this. It's really only less than a month time, anyway, a month or so.
No, it's crashed. Oh, good. Thanks, Marty. So day one is the 16th of October, 1 p.m. start, explore Rockhampton tours. Join us on a tour of the region and some of the must-do experiences. namely CQ Livestock Exchange, Mount Archer Sale Yards Distillery and Rockhampton Zoo. So this is obviously the traditional welcome type activities. Then at 5:30 p.m. there's an art gallery welcome to meet fellow economic development leaders. Day 2 is where it starts in earnest at 7:45 a.m. Registration. There is a welcome to Rockhampton by Deputy Mayor Sheree Rutherford and Economic Development Australia update by Mark Holdsworth, Chairman of EDA or Economic Development Australia, and a presentation by Jacqueline Brinkman, who's the CEO for Economic Development Australia. Then it moves into Industry 4.0, the next wave of economic disruption, a presentation by Nick Pelosis, CEO and founder of 2XE. After morning tea, there's an International Economic Development of Australia address by Chris Richard, International Economic Development Council, followed by a session on business and job creation and rules of attraction, how businesses can make location decisions. Around lunchtime it moves into a case study on New Orleans, the economic resilience study tour case study by Amanda Goody, who is from Sunshine Coast Council, followed by a presentation by Advance Rockhampton on advancing the heart of Central Queensland, and then a session on the Economic Development Australia Award finalist. After lunch, the program looks at strategies for success in tough competitive markets, which will be led by Mark Burris, Executive Chairman from Yellow Brick Road. Then a session on the City on the Rise, based on Wollongong City Council, and then a presentation by David Richards, Chairman, Seafood Partnerships, on how social enterprise can be the catalyst for economic development. After afternoon tea, EDA around the states, a panel of EDA practitioner networks led by Jacqueline Brinkman. Then a session on government, business and collaboration, driving jobs and economic development. Few more lighter items, followed by a dinner at the Great Western Hotel in the Centre Ring. Day 3 is the 18th of October, starts at 8:30. Looks like a keynote presenter, Chris Telder from who's an international keynote speaker, will be talking to delegates about the future of thinking. Usual belief is the title of that session, and there's an hour and a half dedicated to it, so that looks quite interesting. After morning tea, disruptive innovation, a few topics. Adelaide 10 Gigabit by Leonardo Lopez Dignon, who's a research analyst for the City of Adelaide, and how AI or artificial intelligence is transforming the economy by Dr. John Blackett from Cool. An EDA study tour presentation by Bruce Marshall from Melton City Council. A few other lighter items. After lunch, diversity and innovation are two sides of the same coin by Dr. Catherine Ball from World Drones Congress. And a session then on innovation ecosystems and building economic resilience. After afternoon tea, digital disruption by Neil Glentworth from GWI, who's done work with Council and CHDC. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less, is the title for that session. Followed by the EDA annual general meeting. There is a networking opportunity that evening, day 4, 19th of October, is a masterclass. And it goes from 9 to 12:30, where the conference wraps up. It's all about impact, economic development measurement, how to evaluate success, join a team of experts as they deliver the keys to developing meaningful KPIs, and how to sell your success stories. That's just a really quick Cook's tour of the program. Marnie will put that on Docs on Tap. But it looks like there could be a few sessions there that are of interest. Mr. Mayor, Council.
Well, Councillor Gordon-Smith indicated she would like to go. Anyone else?
What's the Sale Yards Distillery?
That's where the old Sale Yards Hotel on Gladstone Road, they distill their own rum. Are you being sarcastic?
You had breakfast the other morning, it's quite
Oh,
easy.
did you? With a rum chaser. Actually, I've tried some of them, it's really tasty.
I'll be going to that Santos one on the 15th and 16th, so I'll stick with that.
So Charlie,
I'm interested, but on the 16th, Councillor Cypher and myself are at Billawilla with the
That's over half a day.
yeah, that's their for big economic forum, no?
No, that's just their little, Billow's little.
I'm doing this, I'm looking after my grandson, I'm sorry.
So we've got 2 starts. On the 17th.
Yeah, well, that starts,
You really have.
starts probably on the 17th.
Unless you want to go to the zoo.
Go to the distillery.
So we're telling what to move the council, General Council, Councillor Goldman Smith, be nominated as, moved by Councillor Nixon. Second. No one wants you to go.
Yeah, I'll second them.
Right. Okay, you've been moved and seconded, so you're on your way. Yeah, well, hang on, not yet. All in favour? Against, thank you, councillors. Then we will see it. I mean, there's a CFC, we'll catch up with this. So, change it. All right, councillors, that's probably the agenda. We've got a couple of closed session items. We need general business before we go into that closed part, please.
No.
Councillor Ross.
I've got to find it. I had a email from Kim McGuire this morning about the raw water use at the sale yards and how it's really working very well. The cattle are actually liking to drink raw water rather than the town water, which is a good thing as well.
That'll be right.
And also they use
a ration, and they
yeah.
start more.
They've had to use quite a bit of water for dust suppression as well, so it's a good drought strategy, I say.
Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, I'd just like to raise the tidy towns. Have we nominated any towns? And I would like to get Springshall nominated because I think people do a great job over there of keeping our town really tidy. So I'm just wondering what towns have been nominated and also put forward that Springshall and Rolleston be nominated.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the tidy town process, our area coordinators normally sit down and discuss that, so I didn't get an update from them on where they're at, and I don't believe any towns have been nominated at this stage, so we can take the
Only a week to go.
Yeah, can I just add, Jim, that I think that when I spoke to Joy Laurie at Blackwater and congratulated that team on their work, I think there was some discussion about another two places, Yannicky was considered. So maybe there's some discussion with.
I'll get an update by email to the council soon.
Yeah, because I think it's important that we recognise that, you know, our towns are good and in our community, and it was great to see Blackwater name get up. I just think that we should be nominating, and I think that, like, if you have a look around our towns, most of them are nice and tidy. So I think that, you know, that effort should be rewarded. So, and I know there are different categories. So yeah, just I'd like to recommend that we put something. Yep. The other thing, I've got there's a couple of things. Santos, just where are our negotiations with Santos, with roads and connectivity with radio and phone?
Through the Mayor, Councillors, radio, that matter I thought was like to rest because effectively the have developed or progressed too far with agreements in place to qualify for federal black spot funding. So the answer is as soon as the next round of black spot funding opens, there's an opportunity to potentially pursue with the partnership. That's not guaranteed, but it's been mentioned and they did push back on the idea, but they also push for additional tunnels in the valley. So that's where we are with Black Spot in terms of the road agreements. We are still going through the process of evaluating what works they have to undertake, and we've also called in as a advisor the Murray engineer who's been dealing under the same infrastructure we've been dealing with them for the last few years. So we've effectively using the same infrastructure agreement, and that he's got much more hands-on experience to how to manage them, because at this stage they haven't provided us with a lot more than this defects on the current road, and they haven't given us, we don't have a tangible works program that they're going to fund. We're still going through and fro, asking for information. So there's a bit of argy-bargy going on still, and that's where we are.
Yeah, so long as we keep the argy-bargy going, it's...
But we also going to rely on Maranoa's expertise in this case, because they have used this infrastructure agreement on them. So the current arguments we've got is they obviously know that we haven't used it before, and they obviously provided us with less information than we asked for. We've asked for more and they haven't provided it yet, so we'll make sure we get what we're entitled to and can get out of them.
Yeah, because we've got to keep on top of that.
Yep.
I mean, we've missed out lots of times, but we need to keep on top of it. The other thing is Ivy Anderson. We've all got a handout today, and I'd like to move a resolution that the Central Highlands Council endorse the Ivy Anderson Village project as a major project for all political advocacy until project completion. And further, to progress the Ivy Anderson Village project to a shovel-ready state, with the Central Highlands Regional Council approving the transfer of 150,000 at the December 1 budget review. I'll have to move that.
It was just a technical clarification question, Mr. Mayor, before you accept that. Well, no, the process is fine, but you asked for the approval and then at the budget review process. So,
Yep. It's a two-pointed recommendation.
So you're really asking that consideration be given for allocation of budget at the budget review
At the
process?
budget review process in December.
Okay,
So
change the word to consideration. Give consideration.
Councillor Nixon, I've just got a question in relation to that budget allocation request. Does that include the business case, or is the business case?
Sorry?
Does.
Includes,
no,
plan.
So it's just that budget
Getting the
allocation
cover ready.
requesting is just for the detailed design,
Yeah.
not the business case.
That was not the business case, though. He's doing that now.
It does include the business case, yeah, well, that's all.
A business case, council, is usually used to determine whether or not you fund something.
Yeah, that's why I was just checking to see.
why it has to be.
Because my only reason for that question was I would have thought you did the business case before you do the detailed design.
You would, council, but
Well, hopefully it'll be done by then.
No, other tasks it's called.
Oh, well.
The business, preparation of the business case for funding is in other tasks.
Yeah, well, that was Neil. She's going to do that now out of the 50,000. Yeah, she's doing it first. There's 50,000 there now, and that will include calling for tenders and doing the business case.
yeah, just a technical clarification, Mr. Mayor, probably really it's a field that both, particularly Gat and Gerard, are experts in, but I think the horse is bolted on this to an extent, given that council put $50,000 in the budget to progress the Ivy Anderson initiative as one initiative related to aged care. So normally, in that signals to the organisation that we're taking that project forward. So a business case usually is to help council decide whether or not it wants to go any further, commit any funds. Is there an alternative?
Just
option?
flagging that December, because that should be done by then.
Yeah, I think, and I'll probably draw on through you, Mr. Mayor, either Margaret or Gerard can help me out, but usually you use the business case to make the decision to decide to invest the money. So if you're going to, if this gets up, consideration of 150K towards making it design ready, why prepare a business case?
But you've got to have a business case to go forward for funding.
No, what Scott's saying is we need the business case to make the decision on this.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying, the business case will be done.
Yeah, well, he's saying, well, if that's the case, we shouldn't be putting this up until.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, councillor. Would it not be a good idea?
It's just
in the
like-
interest of getting some more information, this is a fairly serious consideration. It's not about the project, it's just I think that you would want to see some background in relation to this. Same as the other information we've received today, we've gone back to request. Can we just get that in some shape or form that we do? And make sure that we're just covering ourselves off.
Can I put the first half in there, please?
That council recognises the Ivy Anderson initiative as a major project,
Yep.
which is circumvents the business process, the business case process. Because what happens if the business case reveals that there's other viable alternatives to council constructing Ivy Anderson, then it wouldn't be a major project.
No, no, it's right.
No, I'm not being difficult, council. I'm probably, it's a discipline I think that we will all get better at in time. And as I mentioned earlier, affectionately, the horse is bolted because you're resourcing this one up, and that probably a false signal has been sent for a while. But it's not too late because you haven't made a big investment yet.
Through the chair, can I just say the frustration is that this isn't a project that came around through the back door. This is a project that has been up on the table for many, many years. So we've never ever put it down, well actually we have previously put it down formally and it's been in and out of budget. And now when we finally get to a stage where we think we're getting a bit of traction, and it happens all the time, we lose that traction. So council has been involved in this project. So the question then would be, why has the business plan not been done previously?
Well, I can say through this mayor that a detailed report was presented during the last term of council around 2012.
Yes.
For my association with council that recommended that council didn't go ahead with it. It wasn't a proper business case, but it was a detailed report.
And then council after that did work on it.
That's right. I think council, through the mayor, and referencing our earlier strategy discussion, you've given me very clear direction on what you expect in terms of clear information to make a decision on what other projects that aren't already budgeted for. What information you need to make those decisions. At the moment, this sits in that group of projects, noting that you already have money in this current budget to develop plans or a proposal. So you can seek to make a decision here, or you can wait for that information. It is identified as an initiative that could be advocated for. However, that said, again, referencing our strategy session, the expectation is that I'll bring back a draft advocacy strategy for the upcoming Australian government election. And that would be included in it, but that needs to be decided by council. I just don't know what
I just think this is important enough that it would require a proper report to council, in my view. And I'm respecting what Councillor Nixon and Councillor Sorrell have done in furthering this with the consultant. I just think if you're prepared to wait and present it with a report, council can consider it then. That would be my view.
Okay.
Because it just doesn't have it, might need a bit of tweaking this report because it reads like the business case is yet to be done, and that's after the budget allocation. And so it just probably might need a bit of a tidy up.
So and that's just a suggestion, you're entitled to move this forward if you wish.
No, we don't want to lose the resolution, so we will do more work on it. But can we get it on the agenda? Not next fortnight either. We'll have to.
All right,
so do we do the?
No, I'll bring it back to council, and as mentioned, and those simpler reports will look like, I recommend to council that you obtain further information on these projects. I recommend to council that you fund a business case on these projects. I recommend to council that you put these projects in the parking lot for consideration at a later time. It'll be in that format, and I'll make sure that I
yes, but for us to do Kerry, weren't you more meaning that we do a report on Ivy Anderson?
Well, I think you'll have to provide the background to a report.
You instruct me to write.
Okay, right.
If that's the will, but I see Ivy Anderson as one of the projects in the 130. That said, there is an allocation in the current budget to develop the concept. So it already has been started in that regard. So it is one of the other that we will come back to council on with a recommendation on how we go forward. If council wishes to pull that particular project out and say, no, let's act on it now, well, you can do that. And as the mayor said, he's happy to accept a resolution. But I'm offering you a way forward articulated this morning in the strategy session.
Right, so you'll and I will give you more details. Do you need more detail on this?
Well, if it is intended that you want $150,000 at the next budget review, then yeah, we will need more information.
And can we understand what the allocation is now being used for? Is that for the preparation of the business case? Because that would be good if it was, for example, because.
Well, Carol, isn't that paying Carol?
Yeah, and but Carol's done this report, which is what worries me, and she's asking for council for a business case. So.
No.
It does say that in it.
Right. She's got the 50 now from this year, that's going to be pulling for tenders and do the business case. Because that's what she told us last night.
So I'd rather just, this is
Yeah,
not tabled, it's just a document that was given to us for some information, so that it can come back with a proper report. Well, I think it should come back, if you can do that through Scott, then we'll get it. All on it.
I think we'll pull it out as an individual project, as you suggested, to then I'll bring it back separate to the other list, because it's, obviously there's, you know, upon looking at some of the comments there, there's some differing views on where it's at, how it's going to go forward, so.
So that, okay, Councillor Nixon, you'll work that through, Scott?
Yeah, in the motion, if you do want one, Mr Mayor, would only be that council instruct the CEO to provide a report on the Ivy Edison, on advancing the Ivy Edison initiative at its next meeting.
So, Councillor Nixon, that'll get it up at the next meeting, so that you can be sure that it's there.
Thank you.
All right. All right, you're happy to move it?
Yes.
Yeah, moved by Councillor Nixon, second Councillor Syker, all in favour? Yes, thank you.
And we'll aim to have those other reports before council as soon as possible as well.
Any other general business? Sorry.
Yeah, through this, if I can just update the councillors on the tidy towns. So we have nominated 3 towns for the upcoming round, being Emerald, Capella and Springshaw. So Blackwater actually retains its 5-star rating for 2 years, so we won't nominate that one again at this stage. And we've also accepted an offer from an external organisation to assist writing the applications for us so we can get more in. So 3 towns, Emerald, Capella and Springshaw are going to go in this round.
What was that about, getting somebody to write something?
So there's individual organisations who help write the Tidy Towns application. Some of the criteria is actually quite complicated in the sense that you wouldn't put a town forward based on what the criteria is. So we're using some assistance to help develop those Tidy Town cases.
Chair, isn't the nomination fee quite historical?
I need to confirm, but I think it's about 165.
Oh, sorry, no, I thought it was like that.
I could be wrong, I need to confirm.
Just to be a member of this prestigious.
Thanks for bringing that up.
That's fine.
All right, any other general business before we move into closed session? All good? Thank you, everyone. All right, well, as we referred to general the standing order, so when we move to closed session, those officers that aren't related to involved in the discussion of those matters, if they can leave the room, those officers that are here today. If someone likes to move it, we'll move to closed session. There's move Councillor Ross, second Councillor Riddlecombe, all in favour? Against?
Too quick.